What is it like for Muslims living in the West? Let's bring in Salam Al-Marayati, President of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Just give us some perspective on what Muslim people are dealing with on a daily basis.
Well, I think on a daily basis, we're like all average Americans. We go to work, we go to school, we want the best for our children, we want security in our streets. We are actually thriving economically and socially, but when it comes to Middle East events, unfortunately, that dominates the perception of American Muslims. And what we want to say is we have a distinct American Muslim identity. We want that to be the overwhelming perception of who Muslims are. And the more we get the stories of average Americans out, the more we show how we're pushing back against violent ideologies coming from the Middle East, like that of ISIS. I think people get an authentic portrayal of Muslims, and they're able to battle both the terrorist ideology and the xenophobia at the same time.
And speaking of fighting that ideology, President Obama made a point last night of saying our Muslims are our co-workers, our sports heroes, men and women willing to die in defense of our country. But he also made a point that it is the responsibility of Muslims around the world to root out misguided ideas that lead to radicalization. What's your response to that?
14 Americans were killed.
Well, on the one hand, I agree with the president that a lot of these ideological extremist views emanate from certain Middle Eastern countries. Unfortunately, some of them are our allies, as the United States government. So we have to push back against any kind of violent or extremist ideology, and that's what American Muslims are doing. On the other hand, regardless of where the problem originates, we as American Muslims have that responsibility, even though we're not responsible for the problem, to make Islam known for what it is, and that is the theology of life against the cult of death of ISIS. That is the battle of ideas that is taking place within the Muslim world today. Now, I find this a time of crisis, but also a time of opportunity for American Muslims to be heard and to be known for who they are. And I believe that Islam in the West is part of the solution and reconciliation on that paradigm of Islam versus the West that is emanating, unfortunately, from the Middle East.
So you say these sort of conversations are already happening in mosques among Muslims, but can more be done?
Yes, I think a lot can be done, but honestly, I have to say that we need more help from people outside the Muslim community. In other words, our allies in civil society, the media, our government. There is sometimes an apprehension to engage Muslims who have answers. In other words, there's only a focus on what extremists are saying, and then how we're all reacting to it, as opposed to demonstrating really what American Muslim civic life is all about. And also these unsung heroes that the president referred to yesterday. Number one, I applaud the president's speech yesterday. I think he gave a compelling argument how we need to fight terrorism and violent extremism in a united front. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're a Muslim, Christian, or Jew, we all have to rally behind the presidency on this. But also the unsung heroes, the American Muslims who are working in law enforcement, the American Muslims who are part of our armed services. They are on the front lines day in and day out, risking their lives to defend American values. And then as far as American Muslim communities are concerned, we need help from the media, from civil society, from our partners, from government, to not only work with us in partnership, but be with us when our voices need to be heard, because the moderate voice sometimes is not as newsworthy. It's the extremist voice that may be more newsworthy, but the moderate voice is drowned in that, unfortunately, that environment of hysteria and fear. And there are those who exploit the hysteria and fear, like certain politicians that are using us as punching bags, that we have to push back against as well.
That is a fair point. Well, we are glad to have your moderate voice on our program today.
Thank you.
Salam Al-Marayati, thank you very much.